First test of the 2024 election is almost here, is the Iowa Republican Caucus. The GOP hopefuls are there. Many have been there for several weeks. And as we mentioned earlier, President Biden was also on the trail, but in Pennsylvania. He took the time to warn of what he calls Trump's threat to democracy. Let's bring in CBS News politics reporter Zak Hudak for analysis. In his reelection campaign, President Biden is making the state of democracy a central focus. Where does that issue rank with most voters?
It's not an issue like the economy or like immigration that voters commonly bring up off the top of their head as a top issue for them. But it is something that we're seeing is on the minds of voters. There was an AP poll that came out last month that showed that a majority of both Democrats and Republicans think that democracy could be at risk depending on the outcome of this election. But if you go and actually talk to voters, Democrats and Republicans have very different concerns. Democrats point to fears that people have over election fraud and continued mistrust in elections. Republicans, on the other hand, point to what they say is actual voter fraud. So it's something that's informing the views of Democrats and Republicans, but for very different reasons.
Very different reasons. Okay, so we had a series of town halls this week with leading Republican candidates, but they took a somewhat different track, right? So what stood out?
What stood out to me from Nikki Haley was her having to backtrack earlier in the week, saying in New Hampshire that Iowa starts things off and then New Hampshire corrects it. That was her kind of saying out loud what everyone is thinking, that she does not have a very good shot in Iowa, but does have a good shot in New Hampshire. In that town hall, she was saying the reality that she needs still to do well in Iowa, even if she's strong in New Hampshire. If she finishes, say, fourth, say Vivek Ramaswamy beats her out in Iowa, she's going to have real problems going into New Hampshire.
Ron DeSantis had a lot to say about Donald Trump this past week. He also sat down with our Ed O'Keefe. Let's listen to that.
Am I hearing you right in recent days by doubting whether former President Trump is indeed anti-abortion?
Of course. I mean, he said that the heartbeat protection bill that Kim Reynolds signed in Iowa was a terrible, terrible thing. So how can you say you're pro-life if you don't believe in protections for life?
What do you make of DeSantis's criticism?
I think it shows that he knows that he can no longer beat around the bush. He needs to steal away Donald Trump's voters in Iowa if he is going to have a successful campaign. He knows that Donald Trump's base in that state is contingent on the nearly quarter of the state that is the evangelicals. So if he paints Donald Trump as inconsistent on abortion, he opens up a path to win over some of those voters. In our last poll, he was over 30 points still behind Donald Trump. So this is a do-or-die moment for him where he needs to convince some of those more religious voters in Iowa to jump ship from Donald Trump and join Ron DeSantis.
What's it going to take for Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis to survive these early states, given how far back they are in the polls?
Frankly, they need to show that they can chip away at that commanding lead Donald Trump has. In Iowa, we need to see Ron DeSantis get much closer than he is to Donald Trump. In New Hampshire...
And where is he right now?
He is, I believe, 36 points back in the latest CBS News poll. So that is, double the support he has now, more greater than that, actually. Nearly impossible, it would seem, unless something changes at the last minute here. In New Hampshire, things are a little closer for Nikki Haley. She's about 15 points back. But what they need to do between those two states is show that they can dig away enough at Donald Trump's support. They can convince donors to keep giving to them and keep their campaigns afloat as we move toward Super Tuesday, when campaign ads are going to be much more expensive because we're in these battleground states with large cities. So they need to convince donors that they are viable candidates to keep donating to.
Zak Hudak, thank you for your reporting and your analysis.
Thank you.